So, I need to fully admit, because it's just my luck on the channel, and the real ones will know exactly what I'm about to say. I'm already freaking losing my voice at the beginning of this video. It will be my luck, because this is a news roundup video, that there will probably, maybe, be some news dropping by the time I upload this. So if that happens, and bear in mind if that ever happens in any future news roundup video, just know that I will cover it the next day. But today, we are talking about Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, yes, the DCU movie, as it's got some substantial news behind it. Another perfect example of what will be happening now the strikes are over. And we've got some other teasers from James Gunn with regards to the DCU. We've got quite a little bit of a rabbit hole to get down there. We've also got an update on Superman Legacy, and I kind of want to speak broadly about other projects that we love here on this channel. And then we need to get into the whole frickin' Warner Brothers Discovery Coyote versus Acme situation. It's interesting, having waited a few days now, the developments that have come out of that, what this actually might mean for Warner Brothers Discovery, because they might not be able to keep this up. As in, they might get in trouble in the future. And could this also affect, because a lot of people are asking this, James Gunn and Peter Safran's future projects in the DCU? We need to talk about that. Coming from the Hollywood Reporter here, Anna Nogueira, the actress and playwright who is now making forays into screenwriting, has been tapped to pen Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, a standalone feature centered on the Kryptonian cousin of Superman, being developed by DC Studios. Now, before we continue on with what they say here in this article, we need to read out what James Gunn has to say about this. So he says, "A heartily public welcome to Anna Nogueira to the DC Studios family. Anna is an amazing writer whose screenplay adaptation of Woman of Tomorrow is above and beyond." So he's saying above and beyond anything he hoped it would be. I hoped it would be. "We're excited to be moving forward on this unique take on Supergirl in this beautiful star-spinning tale." Now, I don't want to read too far into that before people say, "Bubba, you're getting into conspiracy territory here." But he says unique take. Well, we've seen a take, you know, and not that long ago in the Flash movie. So this new take will be a unique one, unique to that maybe of the previous actor. So let's get a little bit into that, because a lot of people are wondering about Sasha Kai. But actually, before we do, one thing I do need to note here, and this is a callback to one of the videos I made recently. I'm probably gonna have the thumbnail and the card on screen about now. Go and watch that video if you haven't already. But this very announcement here of Anna Nogueira being the writer for Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, was actually revealed, or should I say leaked, 6 months ago on the DCEU Leaks subreddit in the verified section of their post. Now, the reason why I was talking about this thumbnail wherever it is on screen is because you guys know my opinion on leaks, but I decided to do a video, a little bit of a deep dive into, okay, let's go back to some of those Reddit leaks for the DCU. And what I did is I saw what was leaked, and then, interestingly, in the months after that Reddit post was made, so 1 month later, one leak was confirmed by said director or James Gunn. And then 2 months later, another leak was confirmed. And then a few months later, the exact episode count of Creature Commandos was confirmed, as well as this, that, and the other. Like, it just kept happening. Andy Muschietti directing Brave and the Bold. Months and months before any teasers from Muschietti being available online in interviews for that of The Flash that were getting out, and it seemed kind of obvious that he was directing it, claimed months ago. So just to shamelessly plug here once again, check that video out. But I just needed to bring all of that up again because once again, another leak that is just fresh news right now. This was leaked 6 months ago. So it makes you think what else could be true, and that is what I get into in that video from other DCU leaks that are out there. Let's get back to the article, because this is where it gets interesting, as there was a lot of speculation in the air, obviously, with regards to what happens with Supergirl after the Flash movie. So the project is actually, and this is super interesting, this project is actually a redo for Nogueira. The writer was quietly hired to pen a Supergirl movie in 2022 when Warner Brothers was developing the project as a spin-off from The Flash, then in post-production. Flash featured Sasha Kai as the heroine, and the hope was to launch another DC film franchise. Those hopes were seemingly dashed when Gunn and Safran were brought in to oversee a reorganized DC arm. That project was tossed as the new execs focused on creating a brand new slate separate from former DC Films boss Walter Hamada's vision. And that is kind of what I've been saying all along as well. Technically, we couldn't rule it out, because we do know that we are having some DCEU actors reprise their DC roles, such as John Cena, etc., etc. It yet remains to be seen if he's going to really keep even more characters from the DCEU out there. But if sources are to be believed from that of major trades, I believe, was it Variety or I can't remember who it was, but they're saying that the whole entire Justice League is being recast, and that includes Ezra Miller's Flash, Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, and, you know, you would have to think probably Sasha Calle's Supergirl. Pair that with what Gunn said, you know, we're excited to be moving forward on this unique take of Supergirl. I mean, I'm probably looking too into that. It probably just means the actual Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow story from that of the source material. But yeah, as for my opinion on it, I've said this before. I have absolutely nothing against Sasha Calle. I enjoyed her performance in the movie. I thought she had a couple of awesome scenes in the film that were really emotional, you know, when she exclaimed, "What did you do?" and stuff like that to Zod. But I don't know if it's an unpopular opinion. I just don't get what the massive buzz was about with that portrayal of Supergirl. My whole confusion is, and fair enough, maybe people were taken away with the limited time that we did get, but my point is that I feel like we never saw enough of her. When I came out of the movie having seen it, it's like, okay, so Batman and Flash go to Russia to save her. We have a very quick action scene there, which is mostly comprised of CG with her, which she's back at Wayne Manor recovering. Before you know it, she helps fly Barry out of nowhere at the convenient time into the clouds so he gets his powers back. That's basically it. And then they go to the freaking third and final act battle. And once again, mostly CGI. So once again here, I just never understood the big buzz. So I honestly, for where I'm standing, don't mind if we get a new Supergirl actor to play the DCU version, but also equally, I don't mind if Sasha Calle stays on. I'm kind of indifferent with regards to that. But let me know if you are absolutely on the opposite end and you're like, no, I need her to be Supergirl. Or if you're like me and you're just like, yeah, I don't mind if we get a new Supergirl actor. It's a new DCU. I know we're keeping some people on, but if you're recasting most of the DCEU, then fine, give us a new Supergirl. And as for Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, they describe it as the comic featured Kara Zor-El, aka Supergirl, who, along with Superdog, Krypto, gets caught up in a young alien girl's galaxy-spanning revenge quest. DC Studios is keeping the project's plot under wraps. But since we know that Tom King is very much so involved in this project in the DCU, as well as the illustrator, which is super interesting, as I always say, adaptations aren't copy and paste, but I do feel like they're going to really try and inject a lot of that story, believe it or not, onto the actual movie. I mean, the movie is called Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. And what also piques my interest is obviously Krypto, the Superdog's involvement in this story. Will we actually be getting that? There's been various teasers out there of Krypto. James Gunn saying that he loves Krypto. There was a bit of a joke for a while that a lot of people took as a confirmed thing with regards to an interview with James Gunn and Chris Pratt talking about how Krypto would be in Superman Legacy or something like that, and James Gunn said that's an exclusive to the interviewer, but then he later clarified in the Michael Rosenbaum podcast that it was, you know, just a bit. So, you know, it still remains to be seen. This is a very fantastical DCU, so we could very much so get Krypto the Superdog. Now, as for the actual writer of this movie, I have to admit I don't really know anything about her, to be honest. They say here Nogueira may be best known for a stint on CW's The Vampire Diaries, which I watched a very, very long time ago now, with acting credits including the Michael J. Fox Show and the recent Starz series Hightown. But it goes on to say, but she has also built a thriving writing career. Her play Which Way to the Stage debuted off-Broadway in 2022. Long story short here, it seems that she is very much so breaking out, and I don't mean that in a bad way because she has got credits behind her. It's just what people are pointing out is that in comparison to other writers out there, this might be fairly unusual. Some pointing out how they would have thought there'd be a much more credited, seasoned writer writing a DCU movie like the rumored writer for that of Batman, the Brave and the Bold, which is, yeah, check out my previous video about that. Very interesting stuff. But James Gunn and Peter Safran must have really, really liked her, especially as supposedly, according to the Hollywood Reporter, she was penning the treatment for the previous iteration of the Supergirl movie with Sasha Calle, which obviously isn't happening now. They must have saw that and were like, Well, you can write our one. How about that? And do a redo of Supergirl just in the new universe. And not only that, apparently, according to Jeff Snyder, James Gunn has also given her an overall DC writing deal. So he must be really chuffed, if that is to be believed, with her work and how he can see her writing for more than just this DCU Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow movie. Now, as for a director and other teasers from James Gunn, he has said in some replies on Instagram that they are looking for directors right now, with Jeff Snyder also saying in his report that Gunn is expected to hire a female filmmaker, which, you know, from my observations, a lot of people want Greta Gerwig, some also mentioning Bryce Dallas Howard. I think that would be really, really interesting. A lot of people are pointing out that Greta Gerwig likes to write her own projects as well as direct them, which may somewhat take her off the board, given that this is all about, we've got a new writer for Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. But Bryce Dallas Howard, you know, she may have directed some of your favorite episodes of The Mandalorian, and I think that would be really, really awesome. But let me know if you've got any other suggestions for who should direct Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. And this is also raising a question for some people with regards to the DCU release order, in that maybe Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow will release earlier than what people thought. Now, I don't know about that. For example, the projects are as follows. You know, you've got TV series or animated series picking up with Creature Commandos, and then you've got Waller. These aren't movies. The first movie is Superman Legacy, then you've got another series, Lanterns. The second movie that we've got is The Authority, and then you've got another series, as a prequel one this time, Paradise Lost, and then the third movie being Batman, The Brave and the Bold, or should I just say The Brave and the Bold, another series, Booster Gold, and then the third movie is Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, and then the fourth movie that we've had announced thus far is Swamp Thing. Now, people think it will be shifted to earlier just because we've had this news of a writer. I don't necessarily think so. I mean, never say never, but I do think that the Gods and Monsters Chapter 1 announcement video by James Gunn, the way he articulates that, saying, and then we go into this, and then that's going into that, and then our first movie is Superman Legacy, which is swiftly followed by Lanterns. You know, he says it as if it is in release order. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that, okay, well, just because he said that, and he did mean that at the time, that, you know, you have real world events or circumstances that might want you to, like, pull that movie forward and shuffle the release date of the projects a little bit. That is true. Maybe that is true. But will that apply here? I still don't necessarily think so. But maybe never say never here. And I'm not saying one way or the other, believe it or not, because you can look at it that Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow can mostly be that somewhat self-contained story that it is, and still release a little bit sooner if they want it to. And you can have it tying into, I don't know, it depends how they tackle the story and how Kara is. Are we sucked into that story, or is she telling the story, and then maybe the end of the movie it picks up with present DCU, if that makes sense. So it depends how they narrate the story, from what perspective it's told with regards to the timeline of Superman Legacy and the Authority movie, and if it's fairly outside of that, and then just like the last 10 minutes or the first 10 minutes pick up with Kara just telling Clark about it. I don't know. You could argue that fits in absolutely anywhere. And yes, even bringing that forward if they wanted to. As for some other replies from James Gunn, we have this user here saying, was the script already done before you arrived as president of DC? And he replied saying, no. Woman of Tomorrow wasn't even being adapted before us. And that is true. Yes, we had another Supergirl script being penned by the same writer here, but that wasn't the adaptation of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. It was a different story for Sasha Calle's Supergirl. And, you know, in some other comments here, we have a teeny tiny update. We have this user saying, anything new you can tell us about Lanterns? And he just says fire. Yeah, fire emoji. And the last comment here says, I hope Bill Keys is working on it too. And James Gunn says that Brendan, the Battle Stag, she, Bill Keys, I'm guessing, and Tom King are the freaking foundation of everything. So once again, going over what we said earlier and how the very writer of the comic and illustrator of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow are heavily involved with Anna Nogueira, who is also writing the movie. It's going to be like a very much so true to the actual vision of the original story, and hopefully that will yield something very, very impressive, especially if you're a fan of the comic book. And also, let me know down in the comments below what you actually think of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, if you have read it, and how do you think they're going to adapt that to the screen. Now, as for the Superman Legacy update, I didn't get a chance to cover this, but James Gunn did post on November 11th that thanks to the efforts of our talented crew who never lost faith during the longest strikes in Hollywood history and who never let their foot off the pedal, continuing to barrel forward, creating the most amazing character and set designs I've seen in my entire career. And that's big. Superman Legacy will be making the originally planned release date of July 11th, 2025. So he's just reaffirming here that even despite these strikes delaying certain things that, just can't really be helped because of the strikes, it is still making the release date. Like everything that they've mapped out, that they've seen the schedule and they're like, we can still make this work. And he posted that font there of July 11th, 2025, only in theaters, which is a very classical font with regards to Superman. And it makes you think if the actual movie's title and the font there will resemble that. Maybe, maybe not. We're going to have to wait and see. But this is awesome because I don't think really any of us want any delays with regards to our favorite projects. Granted, if they need to be delayed, then they should be. We don't want things rushed out. But it does make me think about the Batman Part 2. We've been talking a bit about that in live streams recently. Make sure you got notifications on so you don't miss out on when I go live on the channel. But, I was comparing it to how the Batman Part 2, we have very similar filming dates set for both Superman Legacy and the Batman Part 2 being March of 2024. So on one hand, we still have the script needing to be completed for the Batman Part 2. Seemingly there's no casting that we know of. Everything is very much so seemingly behind Superman Legacy, of which has a very, very completed script. It has several characters cast already with, yes, more castings to be announced by the time I'm probably freaking uploading this video. And yeah, they're all kind of full steam ahead. Set designs and everything. Now, that's not to say, just because we haven't heard anything about the Batman Part 2, that there hasn't been some low-key development. Of course, if they're writing and finishing the script, you can get some set design stuff going in the background with James Chinlan's amazing concept art and everything like that. You can bet your ass they've already been doing things like that and probably taking advantage of certain cemented ideas that they have for Part 2 story and delivering it to those departments to start work already, but still refining the final drafts of the script for Part 2. So I'm not trying to say just because we've heard more about one, that means that the Batman Part 2 won't start filming in March of 2024, but it is interesting to observe that I think we do need an update very, very soon, because otherwise it kind of does look that, okay, you pushed it back from November production of 2023 to March production of 2024, but are you still going to make that? I hope that you do, because otherwise, will the Batman meet its October 2025 release date, or will it be pushed back like the first movie from October to March? Will we get another October to March? I bloody hope not. But again, my main message from this is that we should be getting updates very soon. And if it's by the end of this video, I swear to God. Now, for part 2 or 3 of this very long news roundup video, we need to talk about the whole frickin' Coyote versus Acme situation, which... Yes, and the reason why I really wanted to tackle it now is because we've had a very interesting update from this article here, with The Hollywood Reporter saying Congressman slams Warner Brothers for canceling Coyote vs. Acme, calls for federal investigation. So there's a whole bunch of drama going on here, and rightfully so. So let's get into it. So a congressman is calling for a federal investigation of Warner Brothers for its handling of Coyote vs. Acme. So Texas Rep. Joaquin Castro took to X to blast the studio for its original plan to shelve the movie for the tax break. And what he says here, I don't think I've really heard an analogy like it with what's gone on with other projects as well, like Batgirl and whatnot. So the Warner Brothers discovery tactic of scrapping fully made films for tax breaks is predatory and anti-competitive, the San Antonio Democrat wrote. As the Justice Department and the FTC revise their antitrust guidelines, they should review this conduct. As someone remarked, it's like burning down a building for the insurance money. That is crazy to actually really think about, because it sounds so true, doesn't it? When they're like writing off these movies, Batgirl was already shot, but for example, Coyote versus Acme was apparently a done product, like even more, like post-production was already done, like it was all good to go. So it is kind of like, hey, let's burn down the building and get that insurance money. But as we know, and as the article goes on to say here, Warner's has since reversed this decision amid industry backlash and decided to try and shop the film to other studios and streamers. But the studio previously went through with shelving the movies like Batgirl and Scoob Holiday Haunt for the tax write-offs last year. Now, what's interesting about this, as we kind of just briefly teased here, is unlike Batgirl and Scoob Holiday Haunt, however, Coyote versus Acme is entirely finished and had a successful audience screening where its test scores were in the 90s. Supporters of the project applied pressure to the studio to change last week's decision, with some creatives even cancelling meetings with the company in protest. I don't know how you see the movie and then go, that couldn't happen to me, which is very, very, very true, and it is insane. It had very, 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 very high test scores. It was completely done and polished of a product, whereas Batgirl had finished shooting, for example, but still had a bunch of VFX, post-production, all that stuff that happens to go. Not that's excusing anything, but it's just even more unprecedented that it was completely done. And they were like, yep, we're burning down the building, getting that insurance money, basically, as per that analogy, which I freaking love because it just couldn't sound more true, as I said. And what doesn't really make sense about it as well is that they're saying that the cancellation was due to a shifting of global strategy to focus on theatrical releases. Now, this is something that I've told you guys for a long while as well, in that David Zaslav said quite a while back now that you're not going to have streaming series movie exclusive releases anymore. This is why Blue Beetle was put to the theaters. But if this cancellation, or, tax write-off, as they say, was due to a global strategy to focus on theatrical releases, then what I don't get about that is that, yes, Coyote versus Acme was originally slated for an HBO Max release, but kind of like Blue Beetle, it was then given the theatrical release date, but it just got pushed back because of Barbie at the time, and that got in the way. So it was slated for a theatrical release date. So why did you, not only after having a theatrical release date for it and very positive 90s test scores from test screenings, want to write it off to tax? I think some people are saying that because of David Zaslav's attempts at obviously cost cutting and trying to, relieve some of that major debt WBD have got, that he's doing it to all the projects that were somewhat kickstarted under the old regime. You're not having it with any of the new projects, but it's the stuff that falls under the old plans, such as Batgirl, for example, and this was one of them. But it's just, even if that is the case, this one is still a very odd decision that, again, after Backlash, they're like, oops. And not only that, after incredible backlash, you also had other people, other creatives refusing to have meetings with Warner Brothers as a result. Now, interestingly, at the time, James Gunn didn't comment about the situation, and a lot of people were slamming him for that. Now, what ended up happening after that, after a couple of days, is that they reversed the decision, and it's now being shopped around to streamers, so I'm guessing it's obviously really not going to have necessarily a theatrical release anymore, but it's great that it can still be shopped around there. He posted to his Instagram a picture of Coyote, and he's kind of cooking, and you have an emoji from James Gunn with a love heart there, and I think he even liked a comment saying, so I kind of get why you didn't comment about the situation. And, since he liked that, he's kind of basically saying, yeah, maybe he had something to do with it in the background. I can't confirm that. But, since he is internally at Warner Brothers, granted that DC Studios is a separate thing, I mean, let's not pretend that James Gunn doesn't have access to David Zaslav. And given that he co-wrote and produced Coyote versus Acme, that he probably was like, bruh, what are you doing? So with all the people slamming on James Gunn, this isn't to try and sound like a shill. It's just, do you really think that he's going to handle or air his dirty laundry or criticisms of his boss, David Zaslav, out there on social media, rather than actually work internally first to try and be like, bro, you can kind of shop it around to streamers. What are you doing? If you do this, I'm kind of not going to be happy. I know we've got this gig with DC Studios, but maybe, I don't know what he would have said, but I'm just saying, do you know what I mean? It doesn't really make sense to go hard on the guy when he was probably dealing with it behind the scenes. And even if he tried to do that and he wasn't successful, maybe he would have said something, but even with him saying something in the first place, airing stuff like that out over social media, and it's like this, a similar thing to when we had James Gunn not commenting about the Gal Gadot situation. There was a lot of us wondering, okay, so why isn't he commenting about it? Well, if he said that Gal Gadot, after multiple comments and multiple interviews, was wrong about how James Gunn and Peter Safran told me that I'm going to be doing Wonder Woman 3, or we're going to be doing it together. If James Gunn then spoke publicly about that and says, well, I don't know what Gal Gadot's on about, it would kind of cause beef and drama there as well. It'd be like, well, she's a liar. That's what he'd basically be saying if he refuted what she said. If he said something else, but there's still some things we need to figure out, it just makes it awkward. You would try and handle it probably behind the scenes, and maybe that is actually what happened. I wouldn't be surprised if he got on the phone to her. I don't know if he would have broke bad news. I don't know if he would have gone back on what he said of what Gal Gadot claimed they would be doing together, or if he actually did go to the trades as per what Variety put out there, and he rang her behind the scenes, but they also broke it in a different way with sources from DC Studios is saying that this isn't happening anymore. Either way, I've been rambling about this for a while. It just seemed obvious to me why someone like James Gunn wouldn't have necessarily been flipping off Warner Brothers Discovery at the very top, at least publicly, about this whole Coyote versus Acme situation. But lastly, guys, as Deadline go on to say here, because this is on a lot of people's minds as well, also, what does the Coyote versus Acme move by Warner Brothers Discovery say to DC bosses Peter Safran and James Gunn? Can their movies or projects be killed at a last-minute notice? We understand that the filmmaker-friendly Gunn and Safran's green lights moving forward are bona fide and not in danger of any tax tricks. And this is what I've said for a long time as well whenever anyone's asked me about this. A lot of people do like to kind of put there in their arsenal of like dunking on the DCU or the future of the DCU, being like, Zaslav's got to axe the whole thing anyway. I've been like, they're not going to like axe the DCU before it's even had a chance to even walk on the ground. You know what I mean? The whole comment of, oh, Superman Legacy's got to be pulled before it even releases, it's just not really made any sense to me. Yes, they are separate to Warner Brothers, which means that the studio meddling from traditional Warner Brothers perspectives can't really happen. But yes, one thing that does need to be acknowledged is that they do. The only person that DC Studios answers to, even if they are a separate entity in studio, is David Zaslav. Now, I do agree with Deadline here in that what is being developed right now very much so will go forward. Like, Superman Legacy isn't going to be written off for a tax thing. I'm pretty damn sure, and I've said this as well with regards to my video titled Why Superman Legacy is So Important to the Future Success of the DCU, or whatever it's titled, in that they're going to probably try out a few projects before, you know, they want to decide what could be going on with the DCU in the future in terms of should we pursue this as aggressively as we were at the beginning of Chapter 1 with Superman Legacy and Creature Commandos. And also, by then as well, don't forget, by the time Superman Legacy is hitting the theaters, you would have already had filming starting on other things, and other projects would be so far in development that they would be continuing it. They want to see how it's going to go. I think they anticipate maybe a little bit of a bumpy ride, but I think they're hoping that after that, the quality of maybe Superman Legacy will reverberate out there and more people will get on board over time. I've said in that prior video of mine, you know, I think we're going to get Creature Commandos, I think we're going to get Waller, I think we're going to get Superman Legacy, I think the Lantern series is going to release on Max, I think we're going to get the Authority movie, but somewhere around then you can kind of see how your line graph is going a little bit with regards to initial interest. Obviously, though, further and further down the line, if you're getting basically the Flash numbers and Shazam Fury of the Gods, 136 million total worldwide box office, then yeah, a few projects or so deep, you might be like, oh, I don't know about this approach. What are we going to do? Shall we sell off to Universal or Comcast kind of thing? That kind of vibe. But the whole thing right now, yes, we're all good. David Zaslav has spoken very heavily about the kind of new wave of things that they've got. For example, with DC, they're heavily investing into it, which, you know, a lot of people find interesting because they're quite heavily in debt. But I think it's more of like a, you know, putting a chips in Vegas on something, knowing that, okay, there's quite a high likelihood in this situation that, you know, because it's a popular brand, it might do well. So we're going to keep putting money into it. Same thing with Harry Potter, what they're planning to do there. The Lord of the Rings, they want to bring it back to the early 2000s of the gilded Warner Brothers, you know, raking in all of that golden coin, movie after movie after project, franchise after franchise. So again, thinking about it in that way, in that lens, they're not going to pull out the rug from DC. The same with Harry Potter, the same with the Lord of the Rings. They're kind of going head over heels, I think, in not necessarily in a one last ditch attempt hurrah, but it kind of feels like that Because if it doesn't work out with how much money they're putting into this, with how much money they're already in debt, then yeah, that'd be pretty disastrous for Warner Brothers. But even more food for thought there with regards to how much they want this to work out. Anyway, though, everyone, I've been rambling for way too long in this video, so let me know your thoughts on everything we discussed. I can't wait to read what you have to say because, you know, there's some interesting topics in this video. Give this video a like if you did enjoy it. I just really appreciate that, especially if you have made it this far. What are you doing? Hit the like button. Double check if you're subscribed as well. It might say subscribe. You might think you're subscribed, but it just turns out I'm popping up on your homepage. You're recommended again and again. So maybe today is the day that I get your subscription. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you people of the DCU in the next video. Goodbye.